Next, presenting her thesis, A Helping Hand, Why Assisted Death is Ethical for Christians, please welcome Fenella Warren-Wailes.
Serve one another. Love thy neighbor. Spread and advance the gospel. Most importantly, glorify God. Whether you are 17 or 70, the Christian life is one filled with obedience and responsibility. Everything we do should be a reflection of His glory. The duties of the Christian life should be fulfilled not only conspicuously, but continuously throughout our whole lives. Thanks to technological and medical advances, such as new medications and antibiotics to effectively treat disease and illness like never before, or life-extending medical procedures and treatments, such as organ transplants and chemotherapy, we are now faced with a balancing act between life-extending and life-ending medical practices, namely medical assistance in dying. Assisted death has proven itself to be a controversial topic both within Christianity and the world as a whole. For some, assisted death is synonymous with terrible consequences. Slippery slopes leading to involuntary euthanasia, pressure on the vulnerable, misalignment with core Christian values. These issues lead us to ask the question of whether such a practice can uphold values of Christianity, such as the duties of the Christian life and our obedience to God, a question I now seek to answer. Assisted death has been a major point of discussion and debate within both ethical and medical conversations. Assisted death is the act of a physician prescribing, upon request, a lethal dose of medications to a terminally ill patient to be self-administered. Within the United States, a patient must also have a prognosis of 6 months or less and the ability to make clear and thoughtful decisions. The patient must also make a total of 3 formal requests to their physician, and their decision to pursue assisted death must be entirely voluntary. Since the passing of Oregon's Death with Dignity Act in 1997, 10 more US states and the District of Columbia have since legalized assisted death. Some may argue it is not permissible for Christians to utilize assisted death, as it is an act of defiance and mistrusting God, and is the beginning of a dangerous slippery slope leading to practices currently deemed unacceptable, such as widespread involuntary euthanasia. I argue it is ethical for Christians to utilize assisted death, as it is not an act of defiance and mistrusting God, as death is the ultimate reward, and upholds ideas and values of Christianity, such as serving one another and loving your neighbor. For Christians, death is not the end of existence. Rather, it is the start of eternal happiness spent with God. When someone chooses to end their life under aid in dying laws, they are showing great trust and faith in God by having firm belief in Him with their fate after death. Paul Badham, professor at the University of Wales, Trinity St. David, writes that, in a situation where a person's life is clearly drawing to its close, it could be an affirmation of faith, hope, and love for a person to choose death voluntarily, entrusting his or her destiny into the loving hands of God. By remaining faithful and having full trust and faith in God during a time of inevitable pain, suffering, and vulnerability, it is clear someone is not acting against God or in rebellion of Him. Rather, their full trust, faith, and respect for God can be shown. Assisted death also supports values of Christianity. Matthew 22, 37 through 39 outlines 2 of the greatest commandments. It states, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind." And a second is like it, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself." acting with compassion, serving others, and looking out for others' well-being are all elements of loving your neighbor and serving one another that assisted death supports. By showing to others your passing was peaceful and painless in a time often filled with great suffering, assisted death can show great compassion to your loved ones. Additionally, by showing to others you had passed in the way you wanted during a time often filled with confusion and uncertainty, assisted death can show respect, give reassurance, and comfort to your loved ones, all key elements of loving your neighbor and serving one another. Some are quick to say that the cultural acceptance and legalization of assisted death paves the way for a dangerous slippery slope, leading to practices currently deemed unacceptable, such as widespread involuntary euthanasia, as well as target and threaten the vulnerable, such as the elderly or those with disabilities, towards assisted death against their will. However, this argument, without adequate evidence, relies heavily upon unwarranted speculation. Additionally, this argument does not factor in the sheer number of safeguards found in aid and dying laws, which show that the legalization of assisted death has not changed society's attitudes and opinions towards involuntary euthanasia, as well as safeguard from such slippery slopes from starting in the first place. In the Netherlands, where assisted death has been legal for over 2 decades, from 1990 to 2010, the rate of involuntary euthanasia decreased significantly from 0.8% to just 0.2%, showing that the legalization of assisted death in the Netherlands did not trigger a slippery slope towards involuntary euthanasia. As the protection of the vulnerable is essential and of great importance, exceptional care is taken within aid and dying laws to prioritize the prevention of any threats or pressure on the vulnerable towards assisted death against their will. Not only are the vulnerable heavily protected by safeguards in these aid and dying laws, they are also statistically less likely to pursue assisted death in the first place. From serving one another to loving thy neighbor, spreading and advancing the gospel to, most importantly, glorifying God, assisted death supports many aspects and values of Christianity and the Christian life. Assisted death can also show great trust and faith in God, as well as respect for him. I am not dictating that whenever any of our lives draw to a close, we should all leap at the opportunity of a quick, painless, peaceful, picturesque death and call it a day. Rather, I encourage that we, as Christians, can support assisted death as an ethical practice. Thank you.